in, sir, come in. We don't stand on ceremony here. Is she with you, sir? Is she with you? Dropped the right bollock there, haven't you? Here you are. Down the full table here. Come on, you're all right. It's only our bit of fun. She's better than the old bag you brought in last Thursday night.
Couldn't believe that you'd include Bernard in a programme called Heroes. Because for me, he's the villain of comedy.
Coloured couple talking, she says, why don't you go and see the doctor about our sex life? She says, you ain't half as good as you used to be. He says, I'll go and see the doctor. I'll go and see him. Go back a couple of hours later, Stetson hat, rolled umbrella, pinstripe trousers, fancy waistcoat, gold guard, spats. She said, what do you dress like that for, man? He says, I've been to see the doctor. And the doctor says I's impotent. And in future, I's gonna look impotent. That politician, when they found him with a bag over his head and a fucking orange in his mouth and ladies' knickers and stockings on, he had a Manchester City kit on as well. Well, the police kept that quiet to save his family any further embarrassment. Two old maids on the beach, a streaker went past, one had a stroke, the other couldn't reach.
I can remember very well sitting next to Bernard Manning and knowing that he could control the audience. He's very skilled. And I became the laughing stock. I became the nanny figure, the Puritan.
She sat there like a trainee corpse.
He was using the audience against me.
You like the blue gear, or what? Do you like the blue gear? Wash me lips. Do you like the blue gear? Are you working there with your foot? I was 41, and I thought everything had passed me by. I was earning a good living. I wasn't short of nothing. I was earning a very good living, getting good money at different places. But I thought fame had passed me by. I wasn't a household name until Johnny Amp came along and put me on the comedians.
He really was, I suppose, Mr. Manchester in those days. I moved up to Manchester in the early 60s and I was astounded by the nightlife that there was in Manchester. It must have been the swinging city anywhere. I think there were over 460 clubs of different types, and that's where the comics learned their trade. And really, I suppose, were the alternative comedians of the day.
The fellow went to the doctor, he says, well, I've examined you. He said, I can't find nothing wrong with you. He says, you must have Alice. He said, what's that? He said, I don't know, but Christopher Robin went down with it.
Everybody said you can't use Bernard. I mean, those days you couldn't do a blue gag on television.
If a producer tells me, Bernard, I don't want this and I don't want that, I don't want that, just tell a dozen really good, clean, clever stories, that's what I want. So I can write to orders. I've worked in front of nuns.
My daughter had brought her teacher, who was a nun, and the Mother Superior to see the comedians, and Bernard was comparing the show. And I'm sure I lost 3 stone inside 10 minutes when I heard that Bernard... And I went down and said, Bernard, Magella has brought the teacher, the nun, the Mother Superior. Don't worry. I will be the nicest man on God's earth. Don't worry. She's none to fear. And for half an hour, he was resplendent in his comedy. So clean, puerile, down to earth, lovable. But just for that one night. And then suddenly says, there you are, Frank. Haven't said bollocks once.
Frank Carson, I've always enjoyed his joke, Frank Carson.
All the comics would have cue cards, just a card with one word, clues to the gags that they were going to do.
But by the time I went on, Bernard had done all mine. He must have nicked my idiot board and did every gag on my idiot board. Not to my knowledge. I goes on and I'm just stood there. I had to ad-lib, I didn't know what I was doing.
Lovely to see you, George. The wife and your son, you think?
I did actually say to him, it's been a pleasure to know you and a pleasure to work with you. I've always admired you since you used to be on the Phil Silver show when you were called Doberman. He just looks like him, doesn't he?
And Dougie Brown. Unbelievable. Get a drink out of him, you can plat sawdust all right.
We all blended together, and we just did what we did, and he edited it as though we was all bouncing lines off one another. And we all just did our show, and he took what he wanted and left what he didn't.
Fella selling seagulls on Blackpool front, £0.50 each. A bloke went up, he said, I'll have a seagull. He says, take that one there.
And we went to the London Palladium.
He said, I'd only do it for 6 weeks. And that astounded me because the run was like 5 months. And I said, why is that? He said, can't disappoint my fans up in Manchester, he said, because, he ran his own club.
Clinging to your roots is extremely important to anybody in life. I despair of people who reached the top and forgot where they came from. Bernard Manning is not that sort of individual.
When Bernard was born, the story is that he was so ugly. It was terrible that the midwife had to have gas. And his mother wouldn't breastfeed him. She said, I wanted him just as a friend.
My mum and my father were greengrocers in the very young days of my life. Up in the morning early and no lorry, just handcart to push the stuff from Smithfield Market to the shop. Flag floors, one cold water tap, no hot water, no bathroom. We used to go to the swimming baths if you wanted a bath.
I had a pair of shoes in 1933. I could put my foot on the penny. The soles were that thin. I could tell it was heads or tails.
Catholic family. My father was a dead stickler for going to church and everybody being straight and tidy and saying your prayers at night. I was an altar boy, up at 7 o'clock to serve Mass.
As the Pope once said to Michelangelo, you better come down, I think we'll have it wallpapered.
My mum and dad had a wonderful sense of humour. You had to have in them days to keep going. You had to have it. It was jokes in Smithfield Market that set me off. When I started off in Smithfield Market with my dad, about 12 or 13 years of age, all the porters used to tell gags. Funny people. You had to be. To do such hard work and get on together.
An American tourist on the bus passing Manchester Town Hall. He said, say, buddy, little Lancashire lad at the side, what's that there? He said, that. That's our Town Hall, he said. It's our clock. He said, we've got prefabs bigger than that in America. He said, oh, aye. Just then, a fire engine went past. 90 mile an hour, turntable ladders, all bells ringing. He said, what was that, buddy? He said, a window cleaner late for work.
I started work when I was 14 at Senior Service Tobacco Factory, Derby Street in Manchester. There was 5,000 girls worked there and about 10 fellas because it was all in the war. That was 1944. So you can tell I had a beano there. The girls thought the world of me. And then I was with the Manchester Regiment in Berlin. Started singing with the dance orchestra there. Went all over Germany, Dusseldorf, Cologne, entertaining the troops.
This is the Army Medical. 16 blokes, starkers, not a stitch on, waiting for the medical officer. See, they're all stood there, windows wide open. Silent comedy, not a word spoken here.
When I came out of the army, we got certainly an audition with Oscar Rabin for the Lyceum Ballroom on the Strand. Sang with the band. After about 12 months, my contract was up. The club scene had just started in Manchester, the Northern Sporting Club. And I compared it and started slinging a few gags in and a few quips in. Stayed there for couple of years, and these premises came open just up the road from the Northern Sporting Club. It was an old temperance billiard hall and a furniture shop, and we opened up as the Embassy Club. I taught my dad into opening up. I said, what I can do for other people, Dad, I might as well do for myself and you. And our advert was, where you see the stars of tomorrow, today, a family club run by a family.
Even if Bernard wasn't there, Bernard was out doing a charity and he'd come back a little bit later, it still felt like a family club, that everybody was looking after you.
And we had the Beatles there for 14 quid. We had Mike Yarwood there for a £5. He'll tell you, Mike, he's still alive. I can't be telling no lies on this programme. He'll tell you, a £5. Matt Munro was 30 quid. Vince Hill was £60 for the week. Jimmy Talbot got a £5. And he was overpaid.
Well, no, there was said somebody broke into the club one night, and when Bernard came in the next morning, he thought he was in the wrong place. They'd cleaned it up.
I used to be up at 7 o'clock every morning. I'd let the cleaners in at the club. I'd set the room out with a pal of mine, the chairs and the tables and the reserved tables and the list off the book, who's sitting where. It's the things that must be done, you see.
Have to get here a bit earlier than this, you know. We've got a lot to do.
Always make sure your microphones are working a couple of hours before. Always have your phone lines open in case the pianist rings up and says he's got chicken pox or whatever. You've got to be ready for all emergencies. I've learnt all these things in my years in Clubland. And then, 8 o'clock, you could set your watch. Anybody for 40 years could say, at 8 o'clock, Bernard Manning's walking on stage now at the Embassy Club.
There's two young men with us tonight that fought at Goose Green in the Falkland Islands. Thank you very much. Over here on this front table. Celebrating with us tonight. They're Argentinians.
And at 9:10, somebody's driving them down to Plymouth. And that would be Bernard Manning, you know, and like myself, a workaholic, you know. I always say I'm a workaholic, because every time I get a job, I get drunk.
I've seen him do 5 performances in a day, and he's never ever refused work. He's worked on oil rigs, he's worked Las Vegas, he's worked at the smallest social club, a little pub, and he'd never ever refused work.
I was in Doncaster last night, I'm in Wakefield tomorrow night, I've got to go to the dentist tomorrow morning. When I leave this show, I'm in the dentist chair at 8 o'clock tomorrow morning. That bridge there, it's coming loose, so I've got to be there.
Don't you hate it?
Terrible.
Yeah.
I get hold of him by the goolers and say, we're not going to hurt each other, are we?
God knows how I got the stamina. I think it's from my mother, because she was a real stamina person. 95, and she was still doing the books for the Embassy Club. She could reckon a column up at 95 years of age. She could reckon up that and reckon the same column up, go 2 columns. Like that. And her handwriting, she left school at 11 years of age, and her handwriting was absolutely magnificent. It flowed, it was beautiful. Beautiful handwriting. Yeah, she was some mother, I'll tell you.
She's his double, really, because he gets it all from her. She was aggressive and cutting, and she could come out with the most amazing comments sometimes. And when she died, I think he took that badly, because she was a big part in his life, because they lived together. She still cooked his meals and, you know, did everything for him, really.
She was 95, you know, my mum, when she died. She was marvellous. I used to carry her down the stairs to make me breakfast. There's not many fellas that do that, is it, son?
His mother used to be on the cash desk, you know, at the club. And he said, Mother, if ever the club get raided, faint on the cash till.
He gave me a piece of advice when I first joined Coronation Street. And I'm walking up the corridor and this voice said, "Now then, Tommy." So I said, "Bernard, how are you?" I'm all right," he said. And he said, "You seem to be doing well. You're doing well, lad. You're doing well. Little bit of advice for you. Pay your taxes. Pay your taxes, son." I said, "See you, Bernard." And he's quite right. You pay your taxes. Make sure you pay your taxes.
Unbelievable. We had the social security here the other week. I looked over there. There's only 2 behind the fucking bar.
Part of Bernard's humour is potentially quite self-destructive. He will make jokes about the beer in his own club. Now, I wouldn't want to get into this, but the beer in his own club isn't, frankly, of the strongest. And he will make jokes about it being watered down. There was once a fire at the club, and he makes jokes about, all the terrible things that went in this fire as far as the insurance people are concerned.
They can't stop us laughing. I once got sacked for laughing. Man, you're driving a fucking hearse at the time.
I've never got on a stage and died in my life. I've never come off to the sound of my own footsteps. Now, there's not many comics can say that.
I went to Bernard and said, look, we can get you on at the MGM Las Vegas, but we're going to shoot it, and however you go, whether you die or whether you're wonderful or whatever you are, we're going to show it.
This is it.
From Las Vegas, Nevada, the MGM Grand Hotel proudly presents Direct the Limousine Club, Harbor A, Manchester, England, Mr. Bernard Manning.
Here we go.
He could have died of death, of course, but as it happened, he went very well.
The American comedy's got to be slick. And so Enoch Powell became Governor Wallace over there, who was the bigot.
George Wallace died, knocked on the gates of heaven, and the voice said, "Who that?" Oh, I said, forget it.
I told him he should never have impeached President Nixon.
He should have let Teddy Kennedy drive him home.
And they like the Jewish material over there.
My old school teacher was Jewish, what they call an unorthodox Jew. He was a Nazi.
Jewish humour is the funniest in the world. They've always bounced lines off each other. And that's the way to go through life. Otherwise, it's going to be a terrible, miserable life.
4 Jews playing dominoes, frightened to knock in case the waiter came over.
Whenever he announced me, here's my friend, Benny Sternberg, the most hated Jew in England. And that wasn't bad. And then about a month later, he promoted me.
Benny Sternberg here, the most hated Jew in Europe.
Which I was quite happy about that, because that's lovely promotion.
He claims Jewish ancestry. I don't know whether he has Jewish ancestry. I don't know whether it's significant or not. I would not like to think that a person with any element of Jewish genes in his makeup should believe that he can make jokes which other people from other minorities find offensive.
My father's father was Jewish. He came from Sebastopol in Russia. And he died in the Strand Cafe in America of heart attack. And he had 2 brothers called Nathan and Maya. Nathan and Maya. So I know there's a bit of Jew. I've never heard of them, never seen them. The father and mother was very happily married, never discussed it, because I suppose of the Germans seeing Jews off during the war.
Obviously, if Bernard had been making these jokes in Nazi Germany, everybody would have been roaring with laughter. It would have been the stuff of comedy. Clearly it was. Forgive me saying so, I think Hitler would think Bernard Manning was a very funny man.
What about the Jewish suicide pilot crashed his plane in his brother's scrapyard?
Outside his door, he's got a sign which says Shalom. And for the people who don't know what it means, it's a Jewish expression which means peace.
Had the Nazis successfully invaded, I think there are quite a few comedians who appear on our screens who would have done the odd, Führer command performance and a few Gestapo socials. But I think Bernard would have been taken outside and shot on the first day.
2 Jews about to be shot by the Gestapo, behind me. Stood there. Any last request before you're shot? He said, can we stand behind the wall? I said, you cannot stand behind the wall, stand still! The Navy stepped forward, he said, you dirty German bastard. Fuck you and Adolf Hitler. He says, don't cause trouble.
Marvellous stuff. Dangerous as hell.
Unbelievable.
His audience who's sacred.
Was it cold in the ground this morning? Say hello to Roy Orbison when you get back, tell him we're on again.
And they know you don't mean it. They know you're only saying it for a laugh. And that's the main thing. You must never take it serious.
And if you was my daughter, I'd still be fucking bathing you.
I think he gets more pleasure out of seeing people's faces turn and say, I can't believe what he said there. and that is Bernard's technique. It is shock.
Enough grease on them trousers to make a pan of chips, you scruffy back.
You're always a bit wary about going to the Embassy Club. You sort of sneak in the back, because if Bernard's on stage and he actually sees you coming in, you know you're going to get a lot of ribbing. So you sort of do the leopard crawl under tables and chairs to try and get in the corner.
Is it Guy Fawkes? Who is it, that? Let us take that.
If he saw you, you know, I mean, he looked as though he'd had eyes in the back of his head, you know, and he would see you and bang, he'd hit you with some gag, so keep your head down.
Everybody's got a right to be ugly, but you've used a bleeding privilege, you know that, don't you?
He makes no apologies for cruelty. But that reflects the type of background that he and his audience come from, which is a tough, hard, no favours given background, where you had to work hard and still do have to work hard to make any sort of a living. And Manning's humour reflects that toughness of the inner streets of Manchester.
You're not your fine bastard, get home. You don't swear in here, it's our bleeding club, not yours, you know.
You learn to tame hecklers, you've got to make them look foolish. Because they can't win. They cannot win. There's no way you can win against the microphone. He might be the funniest man in the world, but nobody can hear him, only 2 or 3 people that sat round him. You've got an audience of 1,000 people, there's 2 people heard what he said to you. Yet the 1,000 people have heard exactly what I've said to him.
What's he celebrating? No school in the morning, what was he? But them your first teeth, them, aren't they? You're fucking lost if you don't start laughing, I'm telling you. Fucking me, well.
When he's actually telling a gag, it's as though he's telling it to you personally. You know, like he's saying, here, listen to this one.
Woman walked into an ironmonger's shop, she said, will you give me a screw for an old back door? He said, certainly, if you're good, I'll pay for your dinner as well.
When I speak to people, it's like being in my own home. I talk to them and I'm not like in a theatre.
This tramp knocked at this door. Fella come at the door, he says, what do you want? He said, have you got a piece of cake? He said, a piece of cake? He said, you're a cheeky, hard-faced gadget. He said, asking for cake. He said, yes, it's my birthday. He said, I'm an old soldier. He said, have you been to the front? He said, yes, but I couldn't get any answer.
A good gag, a hidden punchline. I've heard this story before, you're thinking to yourself, and then all of a sudden, you haven't heard it before. You see, and then there's topical things like, years ago, that murderer, what's his name? Fred West. The police got him in. They said, how many people have you killed? He said, 7.
They said, we fucking dug 12 up. He said, I know, but I'm a builder. That's just a fucking estimate,
First time I met him was on Wheeltappers and Shunters. And it was really funny, you know, because I'd stepped in to help out because one of the waitresses was ill. So I didn't know the routine, and what you had to do is you had to go around the audience with his tray drinks, and he used to stand on the corner, you know, introducing the artists. So once or twice I had to push past him, you know, and I bet he thought, what's up with her? Anyway, in the end I said, can you move? And he said, you're a rum buggy, you. And honest to God, we clicked from then on.
Scouts had got for a prostitute. She said, would you like a blowjob? He said, will it affect me dole money?
Manchester had that many clubs in the 70s. Theatre clubs with 10 comics on and 10 strippers entertaining 700 men a night and stag nights and things, and there were bound to be blue stuff in there, you know what I mean? But no, if it's done tastefully, if it's done funny.
Not everybody enjoys a blue gag. Some people wouldn't. You know, my mother wouldn't. My mother didn't like blue stories. Oh, no. She was very deaf and she didn't hear half a set. But she didn't like blue stories. She was a real lady. She'd say, what did he say then? And one of the waiters would say, oh, it's nothing, Mr. Mann, it's all right.
I think she knew exactly what was going on, but she, as you say, she turned a deaf ear to it because she used to say to him, now, don't be too rude, will you?
There's 2 cows talking in the field. One said, what do you think about the mad cow disease? The other one said, it don't affect me, I'm a fucking duck.
I mean, I wince when he swears. Instead of saying there's this chap in the bar, you say there's this effing chap in this effing bar. And for me, it's unnecessary. Bernard will say that that's what people are used to now, and that's what they want.